Welcome back to another episode of Where Faith Meets Entrepreneurship and Business. I'm so excited for today's topic, and I may say that all the time, but this time I'm really excited because I feel like right now the world is in a space where everyone is worried about the future of the world, especially financially. When we talk from an economical standpoint, so many people are worried about where their next funding may come from. If they are they safe from losing their job, just so many different things that they are wondering about. Or us as people, we naturally worry about what is our next. And as the world may be preparing for a disaster, or the world may be preparing for a drought or a slow period, that doesn't have to be our reality as believers. And even if it is the reality of the world, we don't have to live that way. And so today I want to talk about It's Not What It Seems. That will be the title, because I feel like a lot of what the world may be seeing right now, it's not what it seems. It may look like drought, but for a lot of us, it's harvest season. It's a season where we will see the seeds we've planted sprout up and turn into beautiful fruit and beautiful plants. And what that just means is there is a harvest for us ready. And so I want to start because I'm going to touch on like 3 different points that I hope will prepare us for this upcoming season. Because what I'm not saying is ignore the fact that we may be in a economical downside as a nation. But what I am saying is, in the midst of that, what can you do so that that's not your reality? Because we know there's a spiritual side of things that we don't have to live and prepare as the world prepares. And so the first thing is prepare yourself. And what I mean by that is, 1, prepare your mind for things that are about to go on and how you're going to react. What I mean by that, I'm someone who watches the news. Now, I don't watch the news all the time, and if it's too much bad things, I will turn it off. But I'm someone who watches it for weather purposes, and I'm somebody who watches it for different resources that they list on the news station. And because of that, I'm kind of aware of certain things that go on, but I'm also strong enough that I've prepared my mind that just because the news is saying it doesn't mean it has to be my reality. And so I want you to prepare your mind by, 1, getting into the word and getting those promises, the scriptures, and the things that God has promised you, getting that into your heart, writing it down if you have to use it as affirmation daily or something to continuously meditate on. Go ahead and prepare your mind for where the world is going. Prepare your mind that if someone calls you with bad news, you already have your mind made up that doesn't mean it has to touch your household. That doesn't mean it has to touch your job. And ultimately, we know that God is our source, and He's blessed us with tools such as our business. For some people, it's their career, their job that they're working every day. Those are tools that God uses to help us. But it's not our source. So if we lose it, we know we still have a God that provides. And so prepare yourself, prepare your household. There are things, if you're a parent or if you have someone living with you, there are some things that I feel like we use as luxuries that sometimes we can be a bit wasteful. And I feel like that if we're going into a season or economic standpoint where food may become a scarcity, or there may be less safe foods for us to eat because they're switching our foods out with a lot of cheap synthesizers and so many other things. And so you want to create in your household a household that is not scared that you're going to be in lack, but also is not full of waste. And so there's a fine line between that, because I'm not saying as a parent, make your kids eat food even if they're telling you they're full. No, that's not what I'm saying. But I am saying there are some luxuries that we do, like every day stopping at McDonald's or Chipotle or Wingstop or something like that. And right now may be the time that, we reel it in. Maybe I plan out better meals that, 1, are not only going to help my wallet, but it's going to help my body. It's going to help my mind. And so those are one of the things you can prepare yourself, is by preparing your household to limit the waste in this season. Limit how much you're spending on outside things that right now you could be patient and maybe do a family trip at the end of the year or once a year, versus every weekend going out and spending hundreds of dollars on different activities and things like that. This would be a time I would personally say that you should be not hoarding, but saving. If you don't have to take the extra mile to add an activity that'll cost you hundreds of dollars this weekend, why not? Try to find an activity that's something that you can do that costs less. And so preparing ourselves is not saying that we need to get scared. It's not saying that we need to hold back from the things we love. It's just using wisdom to say, in this season, maybe it would be best for us to use our resources wisely. Ask God how this money should be spent. Because there is a time, we know there are seasons and times for everything. And there is going to be a time for elaborate spending and lavish vacations. And I'm not even saying stop doing that completely. I'm just saying maybe in this season you limit it. So that way you make sure you have resources in your home for when you really need it. And so the next is plan ahead. And what I mean by plan ahead is if you're a business owner, we know that there are certain industries, certain products you can sell that no matter what the climate of the world is, people is going to need it. One is food. Food is not going away. People are going to need food. So if you have a food service business, this would be a great time for you to start maybe upping your marketing and letting your presence be known so more people know that you are actually there, especially if you are a brick and mortar grocery store or restaurant or something like that. Another thing we know, clothing, oil, gas, so many other things aren't going away. People are going to need those daily. And if you're a business owner who right now you're thinking of what industry to get into, those would be some great industries. Homes. I am in Dallas, and there is no stopping of how many people are moving to Texas. So many people are migrating in, which means there's going to be a need for homes. There's going to be needs for apartment buildings. So if you're in engineering, construction, in real estate, this is a great time. I know a lot of people are saying the real estate market isn't great right now, but eventually that's going to have to turn. And there are resources out there if you are even looking to be a real estate agent right now. I believe Keller Williams, they pay for your real estate school. Now, I think you have to work with them for 2 years once you go through them, but that may be something in your downtime right now. Get your real estate license. Plan ahead so that you're not taken by surprise when things in the world start to turn a certain way. We can be ahead of it because we're using the wisdom that God has given us now to plan ahead. And so also I talked about this being a harvest season for us. I believe that the seeds we've sown, they don't stop harvesting just because the world is in an economic downgrade or whatever they're in right now. So you still have harvest coming. So go ahead and prepare in your mind, what do I do with this harvest so you won't waste it? There are so many people who get big lump sums of money and they have no idea what to do with it. And so they end up spending it, and the first thing they say is, I have nothing to show for that money. A harvest is coming for you. Have a plan for the money. Ask God, what business can I start? Who can I invest in? What service do I need to add to my business? Do I need to use it for marketing? What can I do right now to enhance my business so that when the world get hit, I don't get hit? You don't want to take so much time being excited over the fact that you have the money or you have the money coming that you didn't actually plan for what you were going to do with it. And what comes to mind is I love the story in the Bible where it talks about a man who owned land. He left it to his servants, or he left it to some men, and he gave them each a certain amount to see what they would do with it. I believe one had 5 coins. One had 2 or 3, maybe one had 10, one had 5, and one had 1. And basically he wanted to see what they were going to do with it when he came back. And he came back to see what they did with it. And one of them, he just hid it in the ground. He did nothing with it. And the owner was upset because he said the least you could have did was put it in the bank so it could have got interest. But you were so in fear that you didn't do anything with it. And I want to encourage you to stop letting fear be the reason why you don't do anything. Do something. I heard recently a saying that God cannot steer a ship that's not moving. You need to be moving in a direction, somewhere, somehow. And in that direction, be open to letting God now guide you. But he can't guide you if you're not even taking the first step and moving. So God is going to bless you with the harvest. After he gives you this harvest, have a plan of what you're going to do with it. How can you help this grow? God is a God of multiplication. When he gives you something, he wants it to be multiplied. You have the power to multiply it. He said, anyone who asks for wisdom, I'll give it to her. Ask him for wisdom. How can I multiply this? How can I multiply the business I already have so that way when the world get hit, I don't get hit. My business doesn't take a hit. He's willing to give you that wisdom. You just only have to ask for it. And then a lot of times we don't want to ask for help, not even from God, but from other people. When we look at Elijah was sent to the widow woman, which was different because one, most people knew widows didn't have a lot. And so he was sent to a widow woman. And when he was sent to her, he asked for her to make him a little bread. And then God would expand what she had. And if she would have never done that and been obedient in that and being willing to help somebody else, and then Elijah wasn't willing to actually ask for anything, neither one of them would have been taken care of, because it says that God made sure her oil never ran out for their entire time. So her, Elijah, and her son were provided for. But Elijah had to, one, ask for her to make him a little cake. She had to be obedient to do it, and now both of them were taken care of. And so you just have to ask yourself, not only who can I ask for help, but who can I help? Because you may be on one end of the spectrum. One side, you could be the person who has a lot right now. And there are people who need your help. And you have to be willing to give. And God will multiply what you have because you're somebody that he can get things through. Because we are stewards. We don't really own anything. We're just stewards of what God has blessed us with. And then on the other end, you may be the person who needs help. And it's hard to ask for help. I've been there. I just needed help, okay? And because of that, now you have to be bold enough to say, hey, I need help. I'm in a season where I need some help, but I know that, hopefully if you help me, then God's going to bless you and we'll all be taken care of. And that's really what God wants. We're not meant to just be here for ourselves. We're meant to be here to help other people too. And the way that the world is going, we're going to need each other. It's not going to be sufficient or good for anybody to just hoard everything to themselves and be selfish. This is a season where we got to help each other. And so the last thing is pray that God will help you. There are so many scriptures that show us that what happens in the world or what's happening around doesn't have to happen to us. And so one of my favorite scriptures is Isaiah 43:19, and it says, see, I am doing a new thing. Now it springs up. Do you not perceive it? I am making a way in the wilderness and streams in the wasteland. Another version says, behold, I am doing a new thing. Now it springs forth. Do you not perceive it? I will make a way in the wilderness and rivers in the desert. And what that means is, when there is a dry place, which the world may go into drought, God can give you rivers flowing. Where there is a wilderness season and you feel like you have nothing, God can give to you in that season. So pray and say, God, I see you doing a new thing. Even though the world looks crazy right now, my finances don't have to look crazy. They don't have to be in a drought. My household doesn't have to want or desire for anything. God, we will truly be taken care of because your word says so. And so remind God of his word. Start praying now for your household. That God, when the world goes under, we won't. Another scripture that I love is Psalm 91. I say the whole psalm over myself and pray all the time. But one verse that I love the most, it says, 1,000 may fall at your side, 10,000 at your right hand, but it will not come near you. 10,000 people may be in a drought. 10,000 on my right, 1,000 may be falling on my side, but it doesn't have to come near my household because I have the power of prayer. I trust God. I'm going to go plan ahead and ask him for the wisdom. And then I'm also going to prepare myself. Because I recognize that negativity can only consume me if I allow it. And so where everyone's telling you this isn't not the time to buy a house, this isn't the time to buy the car, I feel like there's some wisdom, obviously, in financial planning. But also, you know the voice of God. And so where everyone else, God may be telling them don't purchase, he may be telling you to purchase. Don't allow the world and what it seems like to determine and decide for you whether or not God has something for you. He's the ultimate say-so. And so where it may look like for everybody else, it'll be a horrible situation. For you, it may not be. I'll give you an example. I was desiring a new car. My first car was a 2013 Toyota Corolla. So proud of my car. It was white. I loved it. I named her baby. And it got to the point where it was now 2020 or 2021? It was either 2020 or 2021. So I'd had her for a while. I had finally paid the car off, and this was in the midst of the pandemic. And I was ready for a new car, but I saw on my vision board that I wanted a Mercedes. And of course, that just sounds crazy because your first is a Toyota and now you're trying to upgrade to a Mercedes all of a sudden. Like, maybe stay in the middle, get a Honda. I don't know, right? So I'm like, okay, God, I trust you for the Mercedes. But everyone around me is like, no, this isn't the time to spend money on a car. This isn't time for a car note. This isn't that, whatever. And so I started looking at RAV4s because I was like, okay, well, I like Toyota. And I wanted an SUV. So I was looking at the RAV4 and I kept looking. I was like, oh, it's not what I really desire. And I've had a Mercedes on my vision board for so long. And I remember being like, okay, well, what's the next best? So I was like, let me look at Lexus, It's less maintenance costs. It's in the Toyota family. And so I started looking at them. And I started liking them, but I feel like I was convincing myself to like them because I was too afraid to believe that God could actually bless me with what I want because I was listening to all the outsiders. So one day I was like, no, I really want a Mercedes. And for some reason, it seemed like the RAV4s were almost more expensive than the Mercedes that I was looking at based on the fact that the APR was more. And it was just crazy. I was just like, no, like I really want a Mercedes. And I remember thinking that I found one and I called because it was in another city in Texas and they were going to drive it here. And the lady was like, hey, somebody just got it off the show floor. So I was like, okay. So I remember being sad and I was like, God, am I trying to get a car at the wrong time? Like, what is it? And I was like, you know what? I watched church. It was a Sunday and I said, I'm going to take a nap. When I get up, I'm going to look one more time. And when I look one more time, God, I want your will to be done. So if it's a car for me, let it be very clear to me. Let it be what I desire, whatever. So I got up and I was like, I'm going to go look at the Mercedes in Dallas because I'm here in Dallas. It makes more sense. Let me just see what they have. And so I saw and I found what I loved, and it actually had like the rims that I wanted, just everything that I wanted. And I was like, God, I'm going to apply. And it almost was fear that held me back because it was like in an economic situation like the pandemic, why would you be buying a Mercedes? And so I applied online because I was almost too nervous to go in there and be embarrassed and get denied. So I was like, let me do it online so, nobody will really know. And it's like, why wouldn't you get approved? Anyway, so I applied online and I get an offer and it's like 12% APR. And I'm like, man, that's kind of, no, I don't want to do 12%. And so the next day the dealer calls me and I ask a few questions and I'm asking, could they lower the price? And he's like, no, but you know what? Let me call financing because I told him, my credit isn't the best, but I've been working on it. I've been paying things off. I paid off my car. And it's just the pandemic. If I have any dings at the beginning of 2020 that you'll see. And he was like, okay, you know what? I'm going to call Mercedes Financial and see if they'll give you 4%. which sounded crazy, like 4% with my credit score. He calls, they agree, and I walk off the lot with a Mercedes Benz, blacked out rims, exactly what I wanted after everyone had told me to look for something else and that I was crazy. And I literally got it at a 4% APR. Now, where God could have stopped right there, that was a big enough blessing. But then I was like, I'm going to sell my car, see what I can get for it. Well, because of the pandemic, there were, I guess, like limits to some key parts or something. So they weren't putting out as many new cars. And so your older car, they were giving more money for used cars. I sold my Toyota, and the amount of money that I got for the Toyota was enough for me to pay a year's worth of car notes. I put it in an account, and it would cover my car note for a year for the Mercedes. So for a year, I didn't have to even think about my car. And if I would have listened to everyone else, I would have been driving around in a RAV4 that I didn't want. Something that I limited myself thinking God couldn't do because I was listening to everybody else. And so that's why I say financial planning is great. Having wisdom on how to use your finances are great. But if God tells you you can have something, it doesn't matter what the environment is like when he tells you you can have it, you can have it. It don't matter if everybody around you is losing their job. If he promised you your job and you're supposed to be on there for however long he has called you to be there, you'll be there. It doesn't matter about your home. If God has called you to a home, he will provide for you there. I truly believe it's based on your faith, whether or not. Because you can say you believe, but there is usually a pit of doubt in our heart. And if we don't allow that doubt to disappear by us constantly speaking the scriptures, constantly telling God that I know, like praising him in advance for what he's already said he's going to do for you, that doubt is going to keep you from the amazing things that God wants for you. And you'll just chunk it up to, it's just because the world is going down right now. No, it's not. You don't have to live like that just because the world is going through it. Doesn't mean you have to go through it. So in this season, I'm telling you to prepare yourself. Plan ahead. Pray. Remember the scriptures. Pray them over yourself. Use them as affirmation statements in the morning. But know that it's not what it seems. Though the world may fall, though they may be struggling, you are a child of God. It does not have to be your portion. It does not have to be the same for you, but you have to stand up and believe it, be bold in it, and you have to tell people no when they try to speak the opposite. Hey, no, I'm sorry. I don't want to hear that. I thank you for wanting to give me advice, but that's the opposite of what God is telling me in this season, so I'm going to listen to him. And you may lose a few people this season. I hate to say it, but ultimately understand that it is not what it seems. Just because the world is going through it, it does not mean that you have to. So that's the end of this episode. Make sure that you are taking the polls that you see if you're on Spotify or Apple. Make sure you're answering the questions on the poll. I would love to interact with you all a little bit more. So if you have any questions, be sure to leave them. As always, I link all of my business and support buttons and everything. I link that below. So any way that you want to connect with me, make sure that you're reaching out and connecting, and then also make sure you're following us on Instagram, because my hope is to put more content out there so I can connect with you as well on Instagram. Have a great rest of your day, and we'll see you next week.